Hello and welcome to Macc-Pow at Home, a series of cosy chats with cartoonists, creators and those from the world of comics, supported as ever by Macclesfield Town Council. Thank you so much for watching all the videos so far. If you're watching this on catch-up or watching it again, not watching it live, then hello to you too. Please feel free to, you can comment as well. Anybody watching now can comment. If there are any comments that are, any questions you've got to my next guest, you can put those in the comments, and if I deem them appropriate, I might even flash them up on screen and ask the question on your behalf. Yes, once again, thank you to Macclesfield Town Council for supporting this. Macc-Pow is usually a physical event, but we've moved online this year to keep the spirit of the event going, and it's given me the chance to talk to some really fantastic people, one of which is my guest today. So I'm now going to bring in the fantastic, the wonderful Tor Freeman. And if you've been watching these interviews, you'll know how this goes. We'll watch this. Here we go. to a huge round of applause, Tor.
Oh, how nice.
All right, and then this happens. It literally goes like that. They stop instantly.
Oh, very nice.
Very well organised. Tor, so nice to see you. How are you doing?
Lovely to see you, Mark. I'm doing well, thanks. I'm in my studio in Brighton, where I'm living at the moment, so you can hear the seagulls making an appearance.
Stealing chips.
They stole when I've been here about a month. They stole one of my sandwiches as I was walking down the street. So I know. Yeah, I've learned to fear them.
Literally walking along, and they just stole it.
Yeah, it was horrible. He came from behind me, and it was wrapped up. So it was very clever that he knew it was a sandwich.
Oh, not the seagull wasn't wrapped up.
The seagull was not wrapped up. The seagull was free to rampage.
Yeah.
Then the sandwich fell in the street, and then we had a sort of awkward standoff, and then I did get it back. But
it's like you're living in some kind of war zone.
It is very much like that, I imagine. Yes.
So it's a studio, and so this is where you work from.
Yeah, so I've been here for about after we came after the everything relaxed a little bit the last time. So I've been here. No, actually, I've been here longer than that, maybe about 3 or 4 months, and it's very nice. And I'm sharing with about 5 other people, and just gets me. Yeah, I mean, I was, like all of us, very isolated for a long time. So it's been nice to come out again.
So 5 other people who are doing similar work to you, or totally different?
No, really different. I mean, actually, I say 5 others, but there are a few people who are doing. My friend behind me works for a sustainability energy provider company, and then there's an events planning group. So they're out at the moment because the Brighton Festival's happening right now.
Right. Okay, fantastic. I just heard the seagulls then. So yes.
Yeah. They've got their babies, so they're being extra loud.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So you are a cartoonist, and I've just put up here on the screen. I meant to say to you just prior to us going live that if you see my gaze going, I'm always listening to, but I'm messing with my little buttons here that give me a chance to do such things as this.
Amazing.
So I just flash up your website here so people can go and check out your work if they're not familiar with it. And in brackets, Tor Freeman, the Phoenix. Tor, for those people who don't know what the Phoenix is, could you give us a little bit of an insight into that?
So the Phoenix is a UK-based children's comic magazine, weekly comic magazines aimed at sort of 8 to 12-year-olds, but I think it would have a much wider appeal than that as well. And it's story comics, so they tend to have sort of serialized stories, recurring characters, less. I mean, there are sort of gag comics as well, but it's less like the sort of Beano or something like that, and much more story based. So I had a strip in that called Sigismund's Neighborhood, which is not running at the moment, but has been sort of on and off. I mean, it's as you know, it's really amazingly time consuming making even a page of comics. So I have to sort of time it right. Yeah.
So do you have more to come? Are you going to be back in?
I hope so. I'd like to. Not sort of penciled in at the moment, but just because I've got other things I'm working on. But yeah, I would like that at some point. I've been thinking also, I've got a sort of long-term idea of doing some kind of agony uncle column. And either I've sort of had it in mind do it for adults. This sort of, I've got this kind of faux intellectual character called Uncle Fabian, and he's sort of pretentious and doesn't really know much. But I thought it'd be lovely if people could write in sort of questions, he could answer them. And I was wondering if I could maybe aim it at kids, but I don't know.
So how long had you been doing the previous comic for them? Was it over a year, a couple of years, maybe?
Yeah, I think probably about three or 4 years now. I think. Yeah. I think. I'm sorry, the dates I'm not good at the moment, but yeah, I submitted a couple of examples of the comic to Joe Brady, who's the editor at the Phoenix, and yeah, I've been doing them I do them in batches. So I do sort of a batch of 8 or so, and do 8 roughs, and then do 8 color when they've been approved.
Yeah, I remember you saying that last year, that you kind of did in batches, which again sort of connects with what you said, that it takes time. They are time, to do a page of a comic. It's time consuming, and it's quite intense. Because the thing is that once you get the thing that you aspire to get, so you to get a chance to do a comic in a weekly, a regular comic, is the thing that is what you're kind of aiming for. Your regular work, isn't it?
Oh, completely. Yeah. No, I wanted to. I had my eye on the Phoenix for years, wanting to get something in them, and it was. Yeah, so it was fantastic. It has been fantastic. And
then when you get that, then you're like, oh, right, now I've got to do this
all
the time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it kind of blends into one, doesn't it? You do feel when you're doing regular stuff, particularly something like for a weekly, that you are anything more than even doing like a monthly comic, a strip. It soon comes round, doesn't it, to when you're having to do that again.
Absolutely.
But when you're doing a weekly, you're basically constantly working it, aren't you?
I think doing it in batches was sort of took that pressure off. And I take my hats off to people who have to do it every week or every day. I mean, yeah, it does come around fast, and you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah, I've been chatting to I was chatting to a cartoonist called Steens from the US, and she is a syndicated cartoonist, a comic called Heart of the City. Which was I wasn't familiar with that comic, but then I did a little bit of research and discovered that it had been running for a long time. She took it over last year, and she was basically talking through the process of basically doing a daily comic strip and how that worked, and how she wrote them 6 months ahead, and then and then she has set days when she works so she can achieve the strips, because it's a lot of work, isn't it? And you're making comics, which is what you.
Yeah, completely. No, it's the best thing to be doing, but it's and I really like doing all the coloring and all that kind of taking it to but that takes a really long time.
So you do the whole thing, so you write it, and then you is it all traditional? What elements are digital, if any?
So I do all the line in pencil, and then the colors all digital now. Right. Which obviously is a massive time saver. Also, I just really enjoy working digitally. Yes. And for a while I was doing the line digitally as well, but I felt like I was losing some of the spontaneity. Right. So I've gone back to doing pencil now.
Right.
And I just especially for comics I do myself. So, I know there's always that option to leave them in black and white, but just speak. And I know it's such a personal thing, but I'm put off by just black and white comics. I'm probably less likely to read them. So I do that effort, but it probably means I get less done as a result.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like seeing the black and white art, and old newspaper comics that are in black and white. But I think you definitely draw things differently when it's going to be in color, don't you? In the end. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, and I hadn't even thought of it like that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe. I don't know what the difference is. I suppose using pencil, I might feel a little bit that the line looked less finished if I didn't have the color as well. I'm not sure.
So do you not ink over the top of pencil?
No, not at this stage. I mean, I've done that in the past, but no, the pencil is the finished. So I do the rough, and then I treat it exactly as if I was inking it. I use a light box, but I do the pencil line. I think I haven't spent as much time with pen, and I'm not as proficient with it. So.
Right. Okay. So I didn't realise that. So you do a very rough, then you trace that, but still in pencil.
Trace that, but still in pencil.
then you colour the pencil.
And then I scan that in, and I treat that the same way I would treat an ink line. You know, I isolate it and darken it.
Right.
And then, I mean, I think often, you know, I've done a lot of sort of trial and error, trying with pen and seeing if that made a difference. But actually, often I can't tell the difference, except that to me the line looks. It looks like I feel I draw better in pencil, basically.
Yeah,
so.
because I suppose sometimes it's like, well, do you need to be penciling, inking, and doing all these extra? You do become at some point, to quote Chasing Amy. I don't know if you're familiar with the film Chasing Amy.
I'm not a Kevin Smith fan. I have to. I've got a bugbear about movies with a verb in the title. So there's so many things about the movie I don't like.
I used to be more of a Kevin Smith fan. Like his, but these days not so much. His films kind of, maybe I'm not the person I was when I watched those, but
yeah,
I still enjoy the original films. I still have a place in my heart for them. But I think I've moved on, and in some aspects maybe he hasn't.
I was going to say, and he hasn't.
And I briefly watched a bit of one of his newer ones, and was just at a bit of a loss as to who this was actually aimed at. But there's a great scene in the film Chasing Amy, where, because it's basically two comic creators who meet a female comic creator, and it starts off with a scene at a comic convention where two fans are talking to the guy who inks the comic, of which they then refer to him as a tracer, because all he does is trace over the top of the pencil line. And so that's kind of quite a famous kind of scene of the inkers are tracers, which obviously isn't the case, and that was what came out of this. But I think when you work on your own comics, unless you're doing, like, your roughs are literally just circles, like for position, then the ink stage is where the drawing comes to.
Yeah, completely. I mean, and it's interesting seeing other artists sort of. Oh, you've frozen, Mark. I don't know if I have. No. Oh no. It's interesting seeing other comic artists' process, because some of the roughs are. I feel like Noah Van Skyver, in particular, if you look at his roughs, they tend to be like, sort of blobs, or like with heads, and then he goes from that to those amazing final inks. Whereas I couldn't do that. Like, my roughs are really quite finished, I think. You can certainly see, and I'd love that idea of just being able to, because I think the compositions would be better and stuff, but I just can't. I can't work like that.
No, I mean, I like to just draw. You know, if I've ever sort of want to remind myself prior to actually doing the drawing, you know, because I always letter my page first and then do the drawing, I might just do a quick squiggly circle. Just and that's as detailed as a thumbnail will get from me. It's just a quick. You don't do thumbnails or roughs? No. Or really? I just go straight in.
Okay.
And just kind of draw it, and then
you just know in your head how many panels there are going to be. And...
Yeah, I kind of work out. So I type the script. So my story is the script.
Okay.
Panel by panel.
Okay.
And then letter that full page, if it's a page or a 4-panel comic, I letter that, and then when I'm doing that, I then work out what panels are big, what panels are small, and then when I'm doing that, maybe I suddenly think, oh, that one panel actually would be 2 panels, so then I break and then add an extra panel to that, and then
you're working fully digitally,
right from the start. So it's fully lettered. And then I just go in and draw it. Now I draw with a different color at first, and then what I literally get everything where I just basically do the drawing, and then because I work in Adobe Illustrator, I then select the colored lines and then literally just convert those to black, and then I'm inked.
Okay. Gosh, I mean, that's quite, I feel like that's quite unusual, but then I guess digital, so you say digital makes that possible, because you couldn't work like that if you were,
And what it allows me, I suppose, is if I suddenly draw something and think, oh, do you know what, I could just do with everything just being, I could just change the composition and just reduce it down a little bit in the panel or something like that. I can do that. but I do try my best to whatever I draw, I stick to, and try and keep it traditional as best as I can with it in the digital world, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So yeah, no. So I'm fascinated by people's process, and I've been talking to everybody about that, and I find it interesting. I had no idea that that's how you did it. That there were pencil drawings, and so once you've so when you were working with the Phoenix, how far in advance from when you were drawing them were they then appearing in the comic?
I can't remember, but a good few weeks. I think. Because when I was doing it in a batch, I'd send 8 roughs, and then there'd be comments on them or no comments, and then I would have maybe, and then as long as, you know, once the roughs are approved, that's the stressful stage sort of done, really, isn't it? Once you've got the ideas. So then colouring, although it takes time, isn't worrying. You know, you can do it.
Yeah,
a few weeks, maybe.
Right, okay. Yeah,
a month, maybe a month lead time, I think.
So when you were first in, I imagine such a thrill.
Oh God, absolutely! I did a special trip to Gosh Comics in London with my studio mates. We were around the corner then, and I photographed myself holding the comic. Yeah, really exciting. I mean, it was a long. You know, I didn't start doing comics until I was in my late 30s, and so that felt like a real endorsement. And to have, you know, another thing about comics, if you're working children's books, you've got an editor who's sort of, you know, helping you. And with comics, as you know, you're doing it on your own, and there's no one to say, you know, you could improve it by doing this. Or so to have Joe making, you know, discussing the comic seriously as if it was, you know, any other viable piece of art was really exciting. Yeah, really exciting. Yeah.
Do you like that? You like having the input from people? I
really like input from people. I mean, you know, of course you can have unhelpful input, and I've had that with collaborations in the past, where not collaborations but from editors, or where you feel like their sensibilities are just different from yours and you're not trying to make the same thing, and that's unproductive. But yeah, most of the time as someone like Joe, I've felt that we were sort of on the same page. So then I really welcome it. I love that, because I think it can only improve it, you know, even if ultimately you decide you don't agree, that thought process is going to help the comic.
Yeah, because when you're working on your own, because I think we have to remember that anybody watching, or when it comes to comics, no matter how famous the cartoonist is, we're all just one person sat in a room, aren't we? You know,
I mean, for the kinds of comics we do, you know, I guess there is sort of bigger, bit like DC or something, I guess, where it's colouring and inking and all that stuff. But for our self-pub, absolutely. You know, even again, like Noah Van Skyver, I just think is so amazing, you know, and I presume relatively successful. But yeah, it's clear. I mean, he makes comics about it. It's clearly just him sitting in the dining room.
Yeah, which is a strange thing, you know, regardless of your status, you're still down to one person in front of something, whether they are a part of a team. But it's not like a comic is made by a group of people, if it is a team, that are all in the same sort of office, scattered all over the country, or probably even the world.
And I feel like that's why we do it, isn't it? Like it is that control. You know, that's certainly what I like about it, is that ability to control all of it. Yeah. Yeah,
and I think that having somebody else's input is also a tricky one, because we're incredibly anal as well, aren't we? Because we love our work so much, and the amount of work that you put into it to get to the point that you, for instance, have got a published comic in the Phoenix, you will have done, because it doesn't just land on your doorstep like that. You know, you put in a lot of time to get to that point. So you kind of feel, not necessarily that you know it all, but then for somebody to come along and go, "Oh, have you thought about doing this?" You think, well, I assume I must have done, because, you know, I've been working so hard to get here. But it is interesting to unlock that little door and go, it's okay for somebody to say. It doesn't mean you've failed or you've let yourself down.
No, definitely not. And I think working in publishing was really helpful in that. You know, I think in the beginning I did feel that, but then, you know, an editor's job is a different job, and you have to trust that person knows how to do their job, and that if they're making comments, it's for a good reason. And the same with the designer. You know, I don't know. I remember starting out in publishing, and there were things like, you know, so the book cover would often come, well, when I was starting, it was a lot anyway, and there'd be very specific sort of feedback, about like having the characters' eyes must be open, they must be looking at all this sort of stuff that I kind of, thought was unartistic at the beginning. But there are good reasons for that. And ultimately, if no one publishes your stuff, that could be absolutely fine. But if you want to get it published, you have to take on that they know what their jobs.
Yeah, they're not being awkward. They're just trying to help you get the best product, because obviously, the better it is, the more chance that maybe you get to do more.
Absolutely. And I just welcome it. Again, to me, it's a sign that someone's taking your work seriously. It's not, you don't bother to comment on someone's work for a laugh. Like that's true. It takes some thought and investment. And if someone's willing to do that for me, I feel really lucky, and I'll listen, definitely.
Excellent. Somebody's asked a question, which is something I would have asked, but because they've asked a question, we've got a few people watching live, Tor.
How exciting! How can you tell? I can't tell that. I
have a little thing that says in my corner. It's got a little eye, and it's got the number. There's 50,000 people watching us at the moment, which is a few more, a few more than the last time. Yeah, a few more than Lou. So sorry, Lou. Yeah. So and I'm happy to go this way now, because we can ping back to process afterwards as well if we wish, and if anything in particular you'd like to talk about, we're always open. But Jay Freedom, who is watching, and
my mum, Jay Freeman.
Well, it says Freedom.
Oh, okay. Maybe not my mum and my sister. Just my mum and my sister are both Jay Freemans.
Oh, right. So. Well, yeah, Jay. So unless neither of them can spell their own name, I don't know. But I'm going to put the question on. Can you please ask Tor?
I feel like I bet that's my sister or my mum.
What I'll do first is I'll say that out loud, because there's always a chance that people might be watching these but listening to them. So the question is, can you please ask Tor what she's currently working on? So Tor, what are you currently working on? Thank you, Jay, for your
So I'm currently, yes, thank you for your question, Mum or Jess, or forgive me if you're neither of them. I'm working on a book for a new Spanish publisher at the moment, and I'm not quite sure how much I'm allowed to say about the publisher yet, but it's exciting because I feel like it's called How to Make Good Choices.
All right, okay.
I had a book when I was young by Shel Silverstein called The Uncle Shelby's ABZ, and it was a sort of kind of slightly anarchic, kind of jokey. I feel I can't share much of this, but so it's just sort of it's gags, and basically the premise is that there's a sort of it's a correspondence course from a school in Europe that's teaching you how to make good choices. And so you've got, so it's practicing with like, would you rather questions and stuff. And then there's an exam at the end, and then either you get certification in good choices or you're banished and humiliated. So I'm working on that.
Is that something that you've written as well, or if they came to you to illustrate it?
Yeah, so Jorge Martin, who's also a great illustrator and is based in Spain, contacted me, and I've been doing some would you rather, just sort of silly things on Instagram, like would you rather, have a bath with Freddy Krueger or that kind of thing. And he just wondered if that could be a book. And there are tons of would you rather books out there, but I thought that if I made it, they don't tend to be so highly illustrated. Apart from John Burningham's famous. He did a famous children's picture book called Would You Rather that's absolutely lovely. So I'm aware of that and keeping it. It's not going to be anything like that. And it's aimed at sort of 8+ is the idea. So I'm hoping that there are gags that grown-ups will like as well.
And so in terms of, so this will be in Spanish?
It's going to be in Spanish in the first instance. And then I'm very much hoping to get an English co-edition as well.
So do you have to write it in a different kind of way? Because in terms of humor, in terms of how the tone is, or are you just?
No. It's a bit of an experiment altogether, I would say. And Jorge said a key thing to me, which is that Spanish takes up, and he sent me an article. It'll take up 25% more space than the English. Okay. So there's sort of considerations like that, which of course going to have to worry about. No, I've kept. It's just my humor. I don't know how to try and do any other kind, and it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be a really interesting experiment to see what happens.
So when are you thinking this is going to be out?
I'm delivering it the end of August.
Oh, right. Okay.
next year sometime. Yeah. So I'm working on that, and then I've been I've got a new picture book I've been working on, and some various bits and bobs. But I think the other stuff I shouldn't say. But yeah, and then my own stuff, my own comics.
So you're keeping busy.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, over the last year I was busy, but not very busy, and then things are stepping up, which is good because I think I need it. Yeah.
So when at what point could you say that I'm a cartoonist and this is my profession, how I can make a living from that?
Well, I can't make a living from cartooning. Definitely not. I hoped I could at one point when I first started, and then for me, I realized that wouldn't, unless something amazing happens. You know, I guess you never know, and you always imagine in our profession maybe it will, but it just takes me too long, and I don't. Yeah. So, but I think I felt comfortable saying I was a cartoonist. Maybe after Gary at Bog-Eyed Books published, Gary Northfield at Bog-Eyed Books published my self-published comic. I mean, actually, even self-publishing it felt pretty good, and going yeah. So that's the second volume of the self-published one, and then Gary and Nikki at Bog-Eyed Books published it. So
this comic meant a lot to me as well, because you picked this up so this is the nice little link. So obviously this is Macc-Pow at home, but I picked this up from when you came to I believe the third. You've been to the third and fourth Macc-Pow, I think.
I think I've been to the second one, Mark.
Oh, did you? Right. Okay. Maybe.
I feel like I was quite ground floory there. I think
you were. I think you were coming to last year's. I'm so confused. Which ones we've missed. So I let me just see. Let's see whether there was a date when you. Oh no, we didn't do that. There was because you did a little dedication to my children in there.
I remember. Yeah.
And it seems like, I don't know, it seems like only yesterday when you did that, but also a long time ago. But not only was this great, because it's great, and I love your stuff, because I might have mentioned this before, but where is it's not here to hand. But your stuff really reminded me of Richard Scarry. Do you know?
Yeah, I do. It's funny because I mean, I absolutely do love him. And of course I see that, but I guess he's not someone I particularly look to for inspiration. No. That much, but I know that busyness and the kind of anthropomorphic animals is very.
I think it's that, isn't it? It's the animals that are walking around, looking like humans, wearing clothes. Which, when I ever go into schools and do workshops, I always talk about if you put an animal in clothes, you've already got something funny. You're onto a funny point already.
I fully agree. Yeah.
And then that means hopefully the ideas can start to come. If you put a dog in a suit, a cup of coffee in their hand,
exactly. Where's he going? What's his job?
Where's he going? Where's he been? I always talk about the fact that dogs are fiercely loyal, and so they only drink coffee from local independent coffee shops.
Quite right. I mean, that sounds likely.
That's the great thing about dogs. But then I discovered the last time I was spouting these facts, Tor, that a child, because I said that dogs love coffee, a child did pipe up and had actually discovered that dogs actually can't drink coffee because it will kill them.
Oh God, Mark.
So I then threw back at this child in a nice way. I was talking about decaf. So so dogs can
still kill them. I don't know.
Dogs can, in my opinion, dogs can drink decaf, but that's me saying that. If anybody's watching this, who's got a dog, don't give it decaf and blame it on me if it does.
God, I did. I do remember I don't know if they still do. The Guardian used to have a section called "How to Draw," and they'd get an illustrator would be like, "So how to draw a cat, or how to draw," and you do 7 or 8 slides showing how to draw something. And I got my friend Kirsten to write in and say, "Oh, I've heard of this illustrator called Tor Freeman. I think she could do it." Anyway, that one email was enough to get me, because it was quite a while ago. And I did how to draw a cat. And then the cat was standing up and it had dungarees and everything. It was clearly not a household cat. And at the end it had ice cream. And the only letter they got was from a professor in Oxford expressing extreme concern about this cat eating an ice cream. I mean, but it was in dungaree, it was but you have to be careful.
Yeah, people can't sort of separate that bit. That well, the whole thing is.
Well, and I think one of the the joys of drawing animals in clothes is that you understand that they're sort of proxies for people, for human beings, but they're not subject to the kind of rules that we are to. I mean, they so you can sort of get away. I feel like you can see animal children clothes sort of walking around the city maybe on their own in a book that would bring up questions if it was real children.
Yes, definitely. And I think one of the things I also like about your cartoons or particularly your animals in clothes. Sometimes you put some of your animals in quite curious clothing. Tor. There's definitely a little bit of a saucy kind of side to your some of the things where I look at these animals and think, I don't know whether I should be looking at this.
I did it was Sid the cat from my comic, and I drew him in a trench coat. It was just part of the story, and I had that feeling of like, I was like, not like obviously not like attracted, but a bit like, he looks really good in that trench coat. It was weird. I think with like the crocodiles in like fishnets and stuff, it's obviously just, I mean, to me that's just immediately comic because
because you're drawing these things to make people laugh, and you've got a gauge of whether it's funny by the fact that if you're enjoying drawing it and it's funny to you, and if you feel you can, I think with any kind of cartooning, even if it is aimed at children, you've got to be able to just push it a little bit far, and sometimes you might push it too far and you have to pull it back a little bit. But I think never play safe all the time, should you?
I think what you said, that feeling of enjoyment is always I can't remember. I feel like it was in my early 30s that I sort of realized that was just such a good indicator of whether whether a drawing was going well. Yeah. And then if you weren't enjoying it, it probably isn't a good drawing. Like that, almost that it's that simple. Yeah. And I think in terms of humor, like I love working kids' books, and I think the humor there is great. But I guess I have to have the outlet of comics that aren't aimed at children, particularly, is a real relief as well. And then I don't have to try and shoehorn maybe slightly weird jokes into anything to do with the kids' side of it. I can sort of keep them separate, which works for me pretty well.
So have you got projects that, in fact, actually, but I was going to say, have you got projects like that you're working on, that you're going to self-publish and stuff like that? Or
so I've been doing this comic on Instagram about set in a not a monastery, a convent, and it's basically I just rewatched the original Blackmail Sisters, and so it's and I've done another nun comic before. I think there's just again sort of comic / weird things. So I'm doing that, and I'll just see where that goes. Just little bits and pieces that I do for myself, and they don't have an audience in mind particularly.
Because somebody's just asked, which is a nice segue, is there a Steve Lenton?
Steve is my good friend. He also lives 2 floors above me.
Oh, there you go. Is there going to be another Oddly, which is this self-published one, which then Bog Eye Books put out those? So Steve is asking that. Do you have an answer for Steve?
Well, there's going to be brilliantly. There's been a German edition, and there's going to be a French edition and Polish, I think. And then and then the French Sarbacon have expressed interest in doing another volume as well, because I wrote a separate Oddly story for the German kids magazine Pol. If I can get together enough stuff, I would really like to, and I think Gary. Bog Eye Books have said they'd be open to it if I could get enough stories together. So hopefully, definitely.
Well, Steve doesn't need to knock on your door and ask you that now. He's asked you that. So Steve, no more questions about that. I think he's asked that, answered your question there. So, well, thank you for taking part there. You're currently going with the most questions asked during the live show. So we're doing all right with that. So
Steve.
This prize has been handed out left, right, centre, I think. So in terms of, so you talk about the foreign publishing and stuff like that. Will any of that, do you hope, that will then take you overseas next year or later this year to promote those things.
I mean, that's definitely my great hope. And I was to have been at the Yippie Festival in Frankfurt next week, and then you know it's not to be. But and they asked me last year as well. So hopefully, yeah, I very much hope next year. And actually, I've been I don't know, you know, the Maison des Auteurs in Angoulême. So I have been offered a residency there. But I haven't heard back since they said that, and that was in April. So again, I don't know. You know, it must be so complicated. But I'd love to do that next year if I was able.
Yeah, no, I think the European events are definitely you know, it just kind of opens up stuff, doesn't it, to a different kind of audience. And I think there's just something kind of culture, isn't there, about being involved with the European events, I think.
Yeah. Although I'm so excited about Thought Bubble this year.
Yeah, so are you going to be at Thought Bubble this year?
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
I am indeed, yeah. So at Thought Bubble and also at the Lakes in October.
Okay.
Which I know you've done.
I did it once, but I found they were so close together. I couldn't. I was just absolutely. I think what I do find them. I mean, I know everyone finds them tiring, but yeah, I was no good doing two one near together. So yeah, I'll just do Thought Bubble.
I think it's exciting to see that these events are hopefully, you know, come September, as we sort of end this another fun year with maybe two good events that are quite different. You know, they're very different, those two events, but have got a similar kind of similar heart to them. Having the focus is on comic art and
yeah, no, they're great, both great.
Yeah, and great opportunities to kind of meet other creators as well, and I think that was something that I definitely wanted to build into Mac-Pow, or at least hope that would come out of Mac-Pow, a sense of the community of cartoonists sort of sat next to each other, whether it be cartoonists that are known, sat next to somebody who's up and coming, or you know, or a section where, you know, it's a real mix of that, and I think that's really important. To have a chance to sit next to somebody who, like you, who's you know, somebody who's up and coming, who maybe thought, I'd love to be in the Phoenix, and then to be sat next to somebody like you who has been in the Phoenix, you can kind of talk and maybe offer them some tips and advice and what to do and stuff like that. And I think.
Oh, completely. I mean, I think those connections are, you know, it's really scary. I remember going to my first Thought Bubble. It was 6 years ago or something with my friend Ben, and like I got a whole table which was way too much space, and you just feel so nervous, you don't know anyone, but it's so easy to meet people and then to go back the next year and know a few faces feels great, and that just keeps building, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does, and it is that's something that I hadn't really sort of dawned on me, that there was a sense of that community that comes out of that. And I think it's really been missing this year. I mean, I feel like part of our payoff for kind of sitting alone and doing all this stuff is to be able to go out and socialize it. You know, with publishing, there are a lot of events as well, and then comics, all those. And it's really, I really noticed that lack for the last. You really missed that. You've missed the. Yeah, I really have. Like, and I've heard other people saying the same. You know, it's a sort of reward. It's the kind of human contact reward for all this. I think it's easy to start questioning the point of it if you don't have a showcase at some point to show it off. It's got to be brought to the people, hasn't it, so to speak? And it's even if it's only a couple of people, you know, just anything to sort of give you something outward facing at some point in the year. It's because really helpful. It's one thing actually having the physical thing that you know is out there. But it's another thing when you've got that physical thing in front of you on a table that somebody comes along and picks up, and especially if, you know, like yourself and like I do, you're doing work that's aimed at a younger audience and stuff like that. To see the joy from the children picking up a comic, because as you know, comics aren't quite as not as accessible as they used to be, in the way that when I grew up, they were everywhere in the newsagents. We fortunately haven't got that the access to comics quite the same way. But it's always important to say, because there are a few people who say the British comic scene doesn't exist anymore, which is nonsense. You want to walk around your Thought Bubbles and your Clock Towers at LICAF and hopefully your Mac-Pows to realise that that's absolute nonsense. Absolutely. No, gosh, absolutely. I mean, I guess it was sort of invisible to me
until I started getting into it. It's one of those, but I suppose that's like any industry, isn't it? You, as soon as you become involved in it, it just kind of unfolds, and there's so much. I mean, my sister Jessie was always very brave when she was younger and would go in. There was a comic book shop in Richmond near where we lived, and I always found it a very sort of intimidating specialist place.
Right.
And I think you've got to be a little bit brave in the beginning, or I felt that anyway, to get in, because anything like that with specialist knowledge, you sort of feel like, oh, I don't know if I can get past the gatekeepers. But then that's not true once you.
Well, it's a funny thing with comics, because it's kind of like comics are a little world for those who maybe don't feel as included in the rest of the world. And so because it's that, then that strangely enough also has the little gatekeepers, doesn't it? Of, well, are we going to let you into this? Because this is our little group that we had to form because we weren't very good at sport or stuff like that. And then you end up, you manage to find your way into this gang, and in your little world, that is the cool gang, isn't it? The comics gang are a cool bunch of people.
Yeah, totally. And I guess I thought I always felt a bit sort of fraudulent, because after, and I, of course I've heard other comics makers saying the same thing, like, I did Tintin, I did Archie, and then, Gary Larson, all that kind of thing. But really, I read more novels. And so it's always sort of, I questioned, I guess, why do I want to make comics, given they're not the first thing I reach for off the shelf.
Right, okay.
And they still aren't. And I don't know, I'm still thinking about that myself, like, wanting to express yourself in a medium that isn't your favorite medium, probably. I think.
Okay, that's interesting. Right.
Yeah. Or it's not even that, it's that it's so, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
So are there comics that you read then? What kind of thing do you pick up?
Definitely. I mean, there are lots that I read and lots that I really like. I tend to like, because the drawing is such a big, so I know people who can access comics that look quite, now of course I'm not going to be able to think of any names, but they look quite sort of difficult or complicated, or the writing's all very busy, and I tend to go for much more, I like YA stuff quite a lot in comics, because that artwork sort of appeals to me. Someone like Gillian Tamaki, I feel like my favorite really recently is her Super Mutant Ninja Academy. That's probably wrong, but it is. Because it's really good storytelling, and I think the artwork is amazing. But I don't know, it's such a personal thing, isn't it? So I would say I read quite a lot of comics, but not as much as I read novels and nonfiction.
So you're not the typical kind of Marvel and DC aren't really your.
It's completely inaccessible to me, and I've tried to read it and it just doesn't. I find it boring. So. I don't know. I feel like I've sort of tried to read a lot of comics to help my own work, but I've got friends who would choose comics first, and that's not me. Yeah, so I guess that's a bit weird.
Well, no, not at all. Because I find that fascinating. I choose comics first. The reading that I do, I don't sit with I might have a couple of books here and there that I might have read, but they've really got. I don't sit with a novel and stuff like that. That's right. That's not who I'm just not that cultured, I think.
I don't think it's that at all. I don't know what it is. Like, I think about it a lot. I'm not sure what it is. Whether it's because I feel like I love looking at visuals. I don't know. It's
funny. I grew up with books, but comics just appealed to me because of the drawing, and then that was just what I thought I wanted to do. So I just went that way. So I don't have a big sort of library of books from my childhood.
But how sort of picky do you feel? Because I guess I feel like if I was just to read comics, I would run out so quickly because I feel so much of it is inaccessible to me for various reasons.
Yeah, I kind of I reread a lot of stuff that for like nostalgia purposes, or stuff that just was there with me in the 80s that if I'm working on a particular thing that maybe I think, that's kind of in the vein of this, I'll reread issues of, for instance, I've got one of my favorite comics was this one, Power Pack, And what I liked, so what I liked about Pow Pow is that they were young kids, and they were almost separated from it was a Marvel comic, but it was a brand new little superhero team of a family of children who all got superpowers. And so in and amongst all the superhero stuff, it was children bickering and talking about, so that was so I something I'm doing at the moment kind of feels that kind of way. So I go back to read those, but then newer stuff, I'm kind of, and then like Calvin and Hobbes, I read my Calvin and Hobbes collection. I'll go back to those. And you mentioned Gary Larson and the Far Side.
Yeah,
those things. I feel like I've got enough of those things from from a long time ago that I don't need to necessarily be reading I don't tend to read lots of new stuff. Every now and then something will come along that I might sort of latch onto.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, my guilty pleasure from last year was buying random issues of the Tom Sholly Transformers versus G.I. Joe comic series. So two properties that I grew up with, more so Transformers. G.I. Joe wasn't necessarily as big over here, but his take on those characters basically is the kind of, when you're playing with your toys, it was he managed to create a comic that encompassed all of that, how that feels. Does
it still feel like that when you read them?
Yes. So when I read that, I feel like this guy has basically had a chance to make a comic in the way that I would play with my toys. But interestingly, there's a great link with him and you, because he doesn't ink his comics. He just does pencil. His line is just pencil as well, and then he enhances that with his colours. So you're quite similar in that way, as well as having the first two letters of your name are the same.
I mean, and I like Transformers. Did I? Yeah, they were okay.
Yeah, they were. I feel like you gave and then you took them. I like Transformers.
I like and Garbage Pail Kids. No, Transformers were rubbish. Yeah,
the Garbage Pail Kids. Yes, I have my collection of those still. So
do you?
Yeah,
it's part of it's part of what was in your heart when you were young, wasn't it? So like I can read. I still enjoy reading old Tintins now. Yes. But I don't know if I came to them fresh. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe if I'd been brave enough to go into the comic shop when I was young, I would have picked up the She-Ra comic.
I definitely sort of would seek out things that I would latch on. So I would find myself in the comic shop, but the things that really jumped out at me at first were I'm a big Sergio Aragonés fan, and he did a comic for Marvel which was called Gru the Wanderer, which he still does comics with this character, not for Marvel but with Dark Horse, I think now. But his was the first Marvel comic that I looked at and thought it looked totally different than all the other Marvel comics. And so instantly I was attracted to that because it was kind of how I saw my style in my imagination. This is the kind of thing that I like to draw. And so and then hit those comics then were the gateway into me discovering other, you're picking up, for instance, your Captain Americas and your stuff like that, of which I had time for, but I don't go back to those comics as much now and reread them. They were just of a time, but there are a core set of comics that I still go back to that I think influence
such a nice thing to have, I think.
No, I think definitely. And I think, as you know, all these things that you have help to inspire you and get you to the point that you're at. And so do you feel that those things influence how you make your comics?
Oh, definitely. I feel like I feel like I have a strand of comics I do that are sort of autobiographical, but and I'd like to do more of that. But I think mostly my stuff is regurgitating feelings about movies I've watched or books. I mean, often books, really. There's a Cold Comfort Farm. There's a character who's seen something nasty in the woodshed, and she just goes to bed for 40 years. And I feel like I've been trying to make a comic about just that idea for, what did she see in the woodshed? It was obviously something rude. That's that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. And it's amazing because it feels like all those sort of, like I read a lot of Julie Cooper books when I was young. Just, kind of sex and horses and romance and that sort of otherwise kind of pointless activity can be sort of translated into something interesting to do with a comic. It's great.
So do you think we might see something a little bit more full blown from you, where you really push?
That's a really good question. I mean, before I went to do this comics course in Florida year before last, and that helped me a lot, because I had this sort of prudishness, I suppose, about drawing like boobs or all these kinds of, almost like, you know, my rat doesn't look like a rat, but I almost felt like someone would point at the boobs and go, she's clearly never seen a pair of boobs before, and that would be the time people started mocking me. But so like a while ago I would have said no way. Now, yeah, maybe, who knows? Probably not with animals though. I feel like that would be
crossing the line.
Some other people, maybe, yeah. Or people do it, but yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe, yeah. I mean, hopefully I've got 40 more years doing this, so I could get ruder and ruder.
You could do. You could become the Jilly Cooper of comics.
that would be jolly. Yeah.
Yeah. So J Freedom is back with yet another question. And when writing comics for kids, do you find it difficult balancing what you think kids will enjoy and what parents will be comfortable with, which kind of connects to what we've just been saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely in my mind not to write something inappropriate, like we were saying. But again, I don't think I'm really thinking of kids or parents. The only way I know how to write is to do something that I find entertaining. And I know that's, you know, some people are brilliant at putting themselves into kids' minds or whatever their audience minds, but that's not me. So no, I don't find that. I don't find that, because I'm sort of making it for me and hoping it'll hit somewhere in the middle, and then just seeing.
I think you know what's appropriate and what's too far, don't you? I think.
Oh yeah, I think so. And I've got no. Yeah, if I'm making a comic for kids, I want it to be for kids. I don't need anyone else to enjoy it. But that's why the all ages thing is pleasurable, because you can you don't worry about it too much, really. Yeah.
When I read your comics, like for instance, in the comic in the Phoenix, I don't look at that. I know that's in what is deemed a children's comic, but I don't look at it as a children's comic that you're doing. I think there's definitely a talking up to the children, isn't it, and not talking down to them. I
think that's true all the way through the Phoenix. Like it's not. I mean, I'm sure there can be educational, but it's not didactic at all in that sort of. It was not moralistic or anything. So I think it has a really nice. I think it says, you know, it's that idea of making stories, and I think especially in kids' books, there can be a kind of moralistic, or, you know, there's got to be a point. And the ones I always enjoy are just the ones that are stories for their own sake, that have no purpose except to tell a sort of yarn.
Yes.
And that's what I'm interested in doing as well.
Fantastic. Well, Tor, we're sort of firing towards a nice, comfortable point to finish up our little conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting to you again. It's so nice to see you. I always like spending time with you, and you're an inspiration. I think I really like your work, and I like to see how the different styles that cartoonists have can be not hidden away in the world of kind of indie, where people don't get to see them. They can be in comics that can be bought very easily, which says to me that the comics industry in this country is very much alive, and so that I think is really important.
Definitely thriving, I think.
Definitely, and I think possibly even having a better time than it's ever had, because the restrictions aren't there. They almost the pressures have gone because there isn't this weekly comics thing where comics are being churned out on a weekly basis, where, you know, it's giving people a chance to do different things, because there are different ways of getting your comics out there. And I think
definitely, yeah, like self-publishing, Instagram, webcomics, so, you know, all that stuff has really, I think, opened it up too.
Definitely. Well, I really hope that I get to see you at Macc-Pow next summer, but we are hoping that you will be taking part in Macc-Pow Mini in September, if everything goes to plan. So that would be great to have you on board for that.
I'd love to. Thanks, Mark. That'd be great.
Yeah, and so yeah. So before we go, is there any? If you want to, I'll flash up your website. Oh, that's the question, not the website. I'll flash up your website again. But is there any other links? So on Instagram and Twitter,
I'm at Tor Malore, TORMALORE, and yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You do a lot of regular posting on there. I check out your Instagram stuff.
Yeah.
You're pretty much.
Yeah. I've been a bit rubbish the past couple of weeks, but yeah, I'm hoping to get back to this nun comic soon. So.
I mean, I was going to mention that, but that's partly why I got you on, just to sort of reprimand you publicly.
No, got to. I have actually worked out what happens in the end now, so that's good news.
All right, okay. But I think it's quite nice that you start something, you kind of go into it, and you're kind of working on it as you're doing it, rather than with a grand plan. But then, even when you do that, at some point, it's nice to go, actually, let's get a bit of an ending, because then you've got all your fun ideas where it's just going either day by day or week to week, and then, but it's nice to sort of go, I think I know where this is going now.
Yeah, it's a big relief, isn't it? Because then you sort of, I think there's a slight feeling of fear the whole time until you realise how you're going to end it. And then,
yeah, I definitely think there's room for doing stuff where you don't know what the end is until you start it.
Oh, 100% agree. Yeah, and it makes you start, which I think
because otherwise, if you hadn't fleshed it all out and you thought, well, I can only start this if I know how it ends, it can take something away from it as well, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And also, there's so many millions of options for how something can go that can be really paralyzing. So if you just start and start making some choices, even if they're not the best ones, you'll at least have a story.
Definitely, and things that happen in your life on a day-to-day basis can then influence them as well. So
100%, yeah.
And I think it's nice to sort of see how who you are a month in a month's time might be actually slightly different than the person you are now, and you might end up with a better idea as well. So.
Yeah, and make a different decision. Yeah, I think that's
fantastic.
Right.
So where can anybody meet you in person soon, or have you got anything planned over the summer? Or
no, I mean just thought bubble, all being possible, then I'll be there. And then always on Instagram.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Tor, it's been so nice to see you.
Thanks, Mark.
Chat to you, and keep making those fantastic comics. Keep drawing animals in saucy kind of. You've got a fan in me with that.
I was going to say audience of one. Thank you.
It's just we've got one more comment. Great chat, thanks, from Mort Zan or Mort 7 Ann. I don't know how you pronounce, but flashed it up. There you go. So so thank you very much to everybody who's been watching. Thank you to Tor for being my guest.
Thanks.
On Friday this week, I'll be chatting at 8 p.m. with, and I'm going to do the surnames totally wrong, Jen Oliveira or Olivia Verera. I'm not quite sure. I'll get confirmation on the day. And Mika Song, who are part of the Sunday Ha Ha, which is an online comics newsletter. I'll be chatting to them on Friday. But until then, thank you so much for Tor. I'm going to send you out, Tor, in the same way as I brought you in, with the round of applause from the crowd. So, Tor, thanks a lot. Stay well. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, that was so great to talk to Tor. As you could probably tell, Tor is one of my favourite cartoonists making comics at the moment, and I always enjoy chatting to her. She's good fun. And I've been very fortunate to meet her. If you get a chance to go to Thought Bubble this year, then seek her out and go and check out her work. So yes, until next time, thank you very much to Macclesfield Town Council for supporting Macc-Pow at Home. And I will see you at Friday at 8 p.m. UK time when I'm chatting to the ladies behind the Sunday Ha Ha. So until then, stay well. Thank you.